Hi, my name is Lorraine Jacobs, and Mark Miller and I are co-chairs now of the Sunday Morning Forum group. So he's the tech host, and I'm the all-around connector. I'm going to read our story, the first Unitarian Sunday Forum story. Sunday forums have been part of Sunday morning for over 50 years at the First Unitarian Society. All scheduling and hosting is accomplished by volunteers. The forums support our mission. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, inspire action. The lecture series showcases provocative and sometimes controversial speakers who review topics of issues of the day. Fire truck. Content is the responsibility of the presenters who share their point of view as formed through experience and knowledge. Every forum is not intended to express all sides of the topic, nor all points of view. Presenters do not receive honoraria. Forum topics may not always fully align with the viewpoint of First Unitarian Society Milwaukee. They are meant to introduce thoughtful topics, which our members may pursue further on their own. And I can tell you that next Sunday, our speaker today will be introduced soon, so I'm not going to go on long. But our topic next Sunday, October 3rd, will be an address from the county executive, David Crowley from Milwaukee County. So Bruce Wiggins is the host for that. So we'll be seeing them both next week. And tell your friends. Thank you.
Am I on?
Ready?
Ready.
Miss Chris will introduce our speaker today. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Miss Chris. Before I say anything else, I want you to know this is my pandemic hat. I will wear it until the pandemic is gone, because many of my friends that I live with part-time at St. John's forget, but they see this hat coming down the aisle and they quick cover their nose. So I hope you will see me soon without the hat. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Jonathan Lord, and he is the Chief Development Officer for Milwaukee PBS. He joined the station in this role in 2018. He's been a fundraising professional for the past 21 years. He also worked with the Milwaukee Rep Theater, the Medical College of Wisconsin, Aurora Healthcare, and Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. But what he didn't tell me until it was late is his great love of the theater as a performer. So maybe you ought to know that some of the people at Channel 10 at PBS are also very talented. He's done musicals with the Skylight, with the Boulevard Inn, and he is a great cook. So if he invites you for dinner sometime, know that as a kid, he watched Julia Child. And now may I present Jonathan Lord.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic introduction. I couldn't have asked for anything more. So thank you, Ms. Chris. And hello to all of you. Thank you so much for having me speak to you today about Milwaukee PBS and the work that we're doing in public television in our community. Today, I'll give a little introduction, just a little background about the station, and then I've got some clips of some of the local things that we're working on for everybody to see coming up, and then a little bit more information about us and what we're doing, and then we'll go into some questions. So I'm sure all of you know at this point, because I'm sure you're all big fans of Milwaukee PBS, but just a little background about the station. It first came about, it was established in 1957 as a division of Milwaukee Area Technical College that had a radio and television production program, which continues to this day. And up until this day, up until now too, we use those students to help them get practical experience in our local productions, which include like the local shows that you see along with our local pledge productions. So we have been here for the community. We pride ourselves in being Milwaukee's storyteller. So being public television and public media that's funded by the community, we're able to kind of dive in and do some really great deep storytelling about community in a way that commercial television really can't. And through the years, as support has grown and technology has grown, we've been able to expand. And originally we were just channel 10, then we expanded to channels 10 and 36. And now we also have some additional channels that you can watch as well, which includes a 24-hour kids channel, PBS Kids, our Create channel, which focuses on the lifestyle programming that everyone loves to watch, World Channel, which has a lot of topical and documentary programming, and then of course the Traffic and Weather channel that a lot of people like to tune into and just kind of watch those highway cams. And in the last few years, we've also kind of branched out and we're doing some live streaming through our website and on YouTube, just like you guys are doing. We also have on-demand programming to kind of keep up with the way that people have been watching, especially during the pandemic, through Milwaukee Pbs Passport, which is a huge library of favorite shows that people can watch whenever and wherever they'd like. And then we've even started doing, with our local productions, some digital first shows. The one that we've been kind of promoting now and that you can see is called My Wisconsin Backyard, which starts as some online shorts. And then we've been able to put them together and do some broadcasts of those so that people can kind of watch us wherever they'd like to watch us these days, which is kind of what everyone in media has to do, but we're happy to be kind of on the cutting edge when we can with that. So kind of thinking about the local aspect and being Milwaukee's storyteller, I have some clips to share with you today of some of the local shows that we're working on. And the first one that we're going to look at touches all of the local shows that we're doing, which Adelante, our Spanish language show, Black Nouveau, which is just about to start its 30th anniversary season on Milwaukee PBS, and 1036, which is our news magazine show. And what we just introduced this month is a new initiative called American Dreams that's going to run through all of them and our digital platforms. And you're going to see interactions online with it too. And it's looking at the concept of the American dream. And especially in our community, going out and speaking to people and seeing what that means to the different areas of our community and what the American dream means to everyone and what individuals' American dreams are. And so the first clip that I'm going to share today is the introduction of that concept, and then rolling out into a small bit of an interview with host Portia Young from 1036 about her vision of American dreams. And this is all introduced by one of our new producers at the station, Mariano Avila. So I am pleased to start, hopefully with this technology, the clip of American Dreams with Milwaukee PBS.
The American dream is one of the core themes in our collective narrative, but it doesn't always mean the same thing to everyone.
Do you know what the American dream is?
No.
Have you ever heard of the American dream?
No.
I think to be able to live the life that you've wanted to live and reach your potential. That's why a lot of us came here. Mm-hmm. I'm German. I came to school here and I became a doctor, and so I'm very appreciative to all the chances the United States has given me.
Can you tell us what you think the American dream is?
The importance of everybody having the same possibilities in life, to be who they need to be who they want to be.
Would you like to know what the American dream is?
Yes. Sure.
Ask your aunt.
So I think when I was a little kid, I thought the American dream was you grow up, get a job, and you buy a house and have a family. And now I feel like it's more, you kind of have the freedom to grow up and do what you want.
And what it meant when James Terzlo Adams coined the term in 1931 has arguably changed more than once. I mean, it's been almost a century. But before we go into how it's different or how it changed, let's start with how it came to be. James Terzlo Adams was a wealthy stockbroker who turned to writing after he figured he had made enough money to live on for, ever. Born into wealth, he increased his standing as an adult. So his experience was not the American middle class experience. This posed a challenge when he coined the term the American Dream in his book, The Epic of America, published 2 years after the Great Depression. Hardworking people were lining up outside of soup kitchens and unemployment lines, much like in the 2009 recession or the pandemic of 2020. But the book hit a nerve and became a bestseller. He had taken an American ideal, a vision, and given it a name. But what did the American dream mean to him?
That dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for every man and every woman, with opportunity for each according to their ability or achievement. It is not a dream of motor cars and high wages merely, but a dream of a social order in which each man and each woman shall be able to attain to the fullest stature of which they are innately capable, and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortuitous circumstances of birth or position.
Today we may think, of course, that's how it should be. America, a land of equal opportunity regardless of who you were when you were born. But Adams traced a clear line between the American dream and the Declaration of Independence, knowing how big a deal it was in 1776. The Founding Fathers decided to dissolve the political bonds that connected them to Europe and the social structures they'd inherited. And in so doing, declared their independence, writing this:
that we are all created equal, that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
But this dream cost some more than others. Not just servicemen and women. For starters, like the Founding Fathers and every immigrant who came after them, we're all standing on native land. Native people were 100% of the population when Europeans arrived, but today make up less than 1%. And then there's also the people kidnapped from Africa and forced to build this nation. What rights did they have? Women were not allowed to vote until 1919, and being gay did not become legal nationally until 2003. So how is it that this idea of an American dream, of a common right to life and freedom and the pursuit of happiness, endure? What shines beneath the tarnish of America's past and present wrongs? How is it that the allure and luster still draw people to American shores from all over the world? And more importantly, what does this dream mean to everyday people now? These are the big questions that, from time to time, we as a society have to stop and ask ourselves.
I love the American dream because I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. So I actually moved here to be a part of the American dream and to take part in the success of America.
You know what? The American dream, just in my personal opinion, is a facade. It was coined over about 100 some odd years ago. During that time, people like myself and a vast majority of people were not included in that American dream. We could not have access to realty, property. Our businesses were being burnt down, or we couldn't get our foot in the door to certain businesses. So whose dream is it really?
My American dream is to be as financially stable as possible so that I don't have to worry about anything. And I could buy land. That would be great. And build a tiny home.
People want to box the American dream into one definition, and it's not that. Everybody's journey experiences are different, so it looks different. So I don't think we can put it all into one box and say this is the American dream.
At Milwaukee PBS, we want to invite you to answer this question with us. What does the American dream mean to you today? Leave us your answer or your story about the American dream at milwaukeepbs.org/American Dreams. We will post good submissions and work with you to tell the best ones. And just to start us off on the same foot, we're going to ask our own team. So let's get to it.
Yes, let's get to it. Mariana Avila joins me now to talk more about these American dreams. Thanks for joining us, Mariano.
Thanks for having me here.
So what can you tell us about this project? How did it come to life?
It's a really exciting project. I think the project came to life through another story that we were doing about Hispanic labor force. And there was one line about asking people who we were going to interview about the American dream. And Chris Hayes told me, you know, that's worth doing a little bit more with that. And then we talked about it. We talked about it with Bodan, our station manager, and it turned into a whole thing that now we're doing, where we're going to be asking people in Milwaukee and our own team about the American dream.
Awesome. So who do you have in mind? Who's the right fit to be asking this really provocative question nowadays? It shouldn't be provocative, but it kind of is, given the times.
Well, aside from yourself, I would like to ask you at some point, but the whole segment or the whole idea is to try to get people from Milwaukee to tell us their own perspective from different communities, especially communities we haven't heard from before or don't usually hear from. My last job was in Michigan, and we did a lot of work with the Sikh community, with Native American communities, and these are communities that really don't have access generally. So that's what my hope is, to be able to bring some of these communities that are not as common in your everyday story to the forefront.
Awesome. So were you asking me my American dream?
So yes. What do you think the American dream is?
I did think about this a little bit, and I would say that for me, the American dream is still about opportunity. My mother, not grandmother, picked cotton in Louisiana when she was 7 years old. And she couldn't go to school when the rest of the kids, when the white kids went to school in September. She had to go in November. That's how long their school year was, November till the summertime, because they had to work the fields. So in just that one generation, you know, my mother has seen so much and so much opportunity, and I never knew that type of life because of the opportunity that education gave to my mom. So for me, that's really, it's still about opportunity. In one generation time, my mom was able to be a successful teacher, an educator. She inspired other children to live their dreams, and definitely me and my sisters. So,
what did she teach you about the American dream? That's a fabulous story.
My mother, you can do anything if you have the education to do it. If you treat education as a gift and really as the key to that opportunity, you'll be successful. Nobody can take your education away from you.
No, they can't. So, do you think the American dream means the same thing to different communities?
I don't know. That's a good question. But I think we will find out through your series. And I'd like to ask you, I'm going to turn it back on you. What's your American dream? What's the American dream to you?
To me, I think it's much like yours. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I come from Mexico City, and my family has been coming back and forth to the States because my parents are both academics, and so my dad got a couple PhDs to do his work. He's a professor now. And they came from some of the roughest neighborhoods in Mexico City, like straight up the roughest neighborhoods. And I don't think anybody in my dad's side has a college education. So from him to go from no opportunities to having a couple PhDs and job offers all over the place, to then raising 2 children to be successful in the United States is no small thing. So I do think we moved here because we couldn't
have those opportunities in Mexico. Mexico is very class-structured, class-oriented, and also has less opportunities to go around. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, Mariano, for sharing this fascinating project with us, and thanks for joining us in studio today. So look for Mariano's reports on Adelante, as well as right here on 1036.
So that was kind of the introduction to the American Dreams initiative that Milwaukee PBS will be doing. And I think, I hope you agree, it was a very strong introduction. I think Portia's story was amazing. And I think we're really going to be uncovering a lot more stories like that as we continue. The next clip that I'm going to show is a documentary that'll be airing in November. And it spun out of a project that Milwaukee PBS did in collaboration with Frontline nationally and some other public television stations, looking at the dairy industry in the US and the problems that it's been facing over the last several years. And they knew after that project that there was still a lot more to tell about Wisconsin. And so the next clip we're going to be seeing is from a documentary coming up called America's Dairyland at the Crossroads. And it's looking at specifically Wisconsin's dairy farmers and a lot of the problems that they're facing. So that's this next clip.
Good morning from AM 1450 WDLB. We've got a nice sunny day shaping up here in central Wisconsin today with the bright blue sky out there today. Lots of bright sunshine. Grandpa used to say this is a haymaker, so get out there and make it count today.
It's really sad. A lot of dairy farmers in the area have exited. They've sold their cows and quit.
Don't let me go there. Talk about a cow tailor-made to milk. Sold.
How did you make the decision to say, I'm done? That was Dad's decision, and I was upset. Matter of fact, I probably said a few choice words that I shouldn't have. But
I don't think anyone in Washington even knows those type of farms even exist. They like to use the picture of the little red barn on their news or advertising, but you know, I don't think they even know, or sometimes I don't even know if they care if we exist, you know.
I hear his frustration, and they are the most hardworking people I know, and we have to have their backs. We have to work as hard as we can. The clock is ticking.
If you want to survive in the future, you have to have a beginner's mind. The farm is going to continue to exist. It's just going to look slightly different. There are going to be robots, there are going to be manless tractors, there are going to be satellites looking down on your individual farm fields. I mean, farmers are going to take their game to another level.
I do think farming is going to continue. We have to change for our children to want to continue.
I've always been optimistic. I love dairy farming, and I like being out in the country. I like crops, I like cattle, I like the lifestyle.
He's willing to change with the times, which is not easy for a lot of farmers.
These farms have changed so much, in that it's no longer Grandpa's farm the way it was 50 years ago.
Farmers have a huge impact on what the cost of your food is.
you got to have the smaller farms. It's just, you can't count on these big farms all the time. You still got to have the little guy. And I think Wisconsin always will be America's dairyland. I hope to God it is.
Farmers, I mean, they just nose to the grindstone type of people, and they always figure out a way, don't they?
Well, we hope so.
And that is a promo for America's Dairyland at the Crossroads. And that'll be airing on Thursday, November 18th at 7 p.m. And I do want to say, I forgot to say this at the end of the American Dreams clip, that you can see we try to highlight on Thursdays as local nights. So our local shows, Adelante, Black Nouveau, 1036, you can catch them on Thursday nights at 7:30. And then if you miss them, we do re-air, but you can also stream them anytime online or with the PBS video app. And the third clip that we're gonna look at is a preview clip from next weekend's eagerly and long-awaited celebration collaboration that Milwaukee PBS is doing with Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra to celebrate the opening of their new performance space. And this is something that we've been trying to do for a long time, with the pandemic kind of set things on a different direction. But next Saturday, I'm sorry, October 2nd, starting at 7 p.m., you're going to be able to have an entire evening celebrating the arts in Milwaukee. And the first half hour is a special that we are coming up with that's called the Symphonic Celebration, the Milwaukee Symphony's New Home, which goes behind the scenes of both the renovation of the Warner Theater into the new Bradley Symphony Center, and looking at all the work that was done to take this classic movie house and make it into a state-of-the-art orchestra performance space for the MSO. And then following at 7:30 that night is the live concert with Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. And this next clip is a segment from the special behind the scenes renovation special that's going to be at 7 o'clock, kind of giving you the flavor of all the work that went into making this a beautiful space. So here we go.
90 years ago, this building was built for the people of Milwaukee to enjoy movies and be entertained. 60 years ago, the Milwaukee Symphony was founded to provide a place for people to enjoy art. And here we are now about to realize the dream of having this new Symphony Center open, not for the Milwaukee Symphony, but for the people of Milwaukee.
We are restoring a masterpiece of a 1930 movie palace. And I think the city of Milwaukee is going to be super impressed with what the symphony has done to restore the original fabric of the theater and what it's done to adapt it to its own needs and uses.
This building is part of the 1930s movement for movie palaces. When people would come to the movies for a full experience, they would immerse themselves in the art and the beauty even before they got to see the screen. And this building is a really gorgeous example of that. It has a couple of different decorative styles all within this one historic building. When you walk in the theater, you're in a beautiful Art Deco lobby with aluminum leaf finishes that shine in the light, with gold glazes that really make it glow, with almost floor-to-ceiling mirrors with distinctive etching. And right from the minute you walk in the door, you feel that beauty and that special drama and glamour that is such an important part of the building. As you move through, you come into the house where the movie screen would be, and it's a completely different style. It's more of a French Renaissance style. So over-the-top, ornate plaster work with murals and romantic figures on the walls, really reinforcing that glorious, glamorous feel that going to the movies can have. Over the years, since 1930, a lot of things have happened here, and it's the natural life cycle of a building to need some work from now and then.
It sounds simple at first. Take an old theater, turn it into a concert hall, and add the modern amenities, because there were like 3 bathrooms and no elevators in the building. This building lived through the Industrial Revolution, so it had picked up a lot of city grime along the way. The basement had flooded in 1996, and then add to it the complexities of the acoustics and how precise everything had to be, how all additions had to be isolated from the theater hall. No one wants to hear something going on in the addition when you're during a concert. All those things together added a rich texture of constraints that, as a designer, we thrive on.
This is unique in that it is one project, but really it's 5. So we look at it as the North Addition, the East Addition, the South Addition, the interior existing hall renovation, and then this office tower renovation as well. It seems like the first third of the project, it goes super fast, because you're putting foundations in, you're putting the structure up, you're doing all these visual things that you can see. Moving the wall is a clear one. That wall was always going to get moved.
Moving the wall became one of the main driving parameters, not only for the volume of the theater itself to be able to become a symphonic hall, so establishing that volume, but then it was a negotiation and working through how narrow the street could be and how much stage we needed to actually function as a symphonic hall.
Now, it was a requirement of the Park Service. That's why we had to do it, because we couldn't mimic a historic wall, so we had to move it. So we got to the wall move day. That night, it was actually tied into the final resting spot. Overall, it went well. Then the middle third always seems to go slow, and that middle third is kind of all the infrastructure that's going in. It's putting up walls that you know, there's no drywall on, so you can see right through. It's all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, AV, all those things are happening, but it visually doesn't look like you're progressing. The last third now, which is kind of the fun piece where all the finishes and everything starts tying and coming into the project. You can see from week to week, it's going to go quick now, and it's going to start showing what the design is and what this is really going to be.
A first pass for our artists was to come through and do a deep cleaning, a very careful cleaning with specific chemicals that would remove the dirt and dust, but leave the original paint intact. The second portion for us was to restore any pieces that were missing. If areas of a decorative finish had fallen off the wall, our artists would come in and replicate those faithfully. So that at the end of the project, what you're going to see is the finishes the way that you saw them back in 1930. Having a project like this, of this scale, size, complexity right in our backyard, it's a really great example for us to show off our skills.
There aren't many spaces left in the world that have the design that this has. We saved a very unique historic building, which is something to be proud of. This is a legacy project for all of us.
The Bradley Symphony Center will soon be a landmark. As you can see, the grandeur of this theater is remarkable. We're really, really excited about the Milwaukee Symphony's new chapter and hope that people across the community, state, and country will be inspired and moved by the performances which will soon begin at the Bradley Symphony Center.
Right, I'll stop the share now. So that's just a little taste of what's coming next weekend for the MSO Big Evening on Milwaukee PBS starting at 7 o'clock. And the behind the scenes is going to be something spectacular to take in, but also the performance itself, the live broadcast, is going to be fantastic. Our teams have been working for weeks in the space to try and get everything laid out. We have a nationally renowned director coming in who does televised orchestral performances, who we've been working with to, get all of the direction and cameras, figured out ahead of time. And this has been kind of a labor of love for the station. It started just before I actually officially started in my job. I was at an event just kind of meeting people, and our general manager, Bodan Zachary, had been looking into the MSO and this whole project and had this idea of collaborating again. PBS and the MSO have collaborated for years, broadcasting concerts, and the station has also tried to highlight the other arts organizations, to the ballet, Skylight, to try and really showcase what Milwaukee has to offer with the arts, not only to ourselves, but oftentimes beyond our own normal broadcast area. And I can say with pride that nationally, PBS has already agreed to air this concert. So it'll be live for all of us next Saturday. But if you want to catch it again, or you have friends in other parts of the country, on December 17th at 8 p.m., this MSO concert is going to air nationally on PBS. So everyone everywhere can take in and see the impressive space and the amazing world-class talent that we have here in Milwaukee with the arts. So thank you all for sitting through those clips and getting kind of a flavor of what's coming up with that. And kind of moving into staying with kind of a local flair. We're not just, what we're trying to do now is, everybody knows that we're on the television. You can just turn it on and watch us, and you can go online and see us. But one of the kind of initiatives that we've been trying to do over the past few years, and the pandemic has kind of hindered it a little bit, is to let people know that we physically exist, that we're more than just the screen, we're beyond that. So we're trying increasingly to find in-person engagement with the community so that people can benefit from events that tie into the themes of the programs that we have, and then take that to a real world level and enrichment even more. So one of the events that has kind of become a signature for us and kind of spun out of the popularity of the Antiques Roadshow is our Appraisal Fair, which has been going on for more than a decade. And unfortunately, last year and this year, we've had to kind of postpone it, but as everyone has changed with the times, we have moved to a virtual format with that as well. And so if you visit our website or you're on our mailing list, you'll find that we're having some virtual engagement opportunities for the Appraisal Fair as well, where some of those experts who come in and appraise items from the community are now meeting with people and taking pictures and giving some really practical advice on not only valuation for items that people have, but also storage techniques, how to keep your valuables safe. And something that we've found increasingly important and had a lot of requests for and found some specialization is helping people that have been accumulating items for decades. When they decide to start downsizing, when they want to move out of their big house, helping people find the right people to connect with and how to start looking at your own collections to downsize for the next step in your own life, in your enjoyment. So, you feel confident in what you're doing with your possessions. So that's been a big one for us a couple of years ago, and we're looking forward to doing it again, is partnering with the Pabst Mansion during their Christmas season, when they decorate so beautifully with all the Christmas trees and everything in their period decorations, to bring in our viewers to go through and have a special viewers only night at the Pabst Mansion to really celebrate. We know that the golden age is a huge interest for viewers with Masterpiece and Downton Abbey and things. So when people are able to immerse themselves in those experiences, it just brings it that much closer to home with all of that. We also are doing more screenings as we can. A lot of times we're able to get some advanced screenings for shows that are coming up, or partner with organizations like Milwaukee Film to do things in person at different theaters and even online to do some previews. And the nice thing about the virtual realm is that we're also able to get some talkback sessions virtually. So last year with our Indie Lens pop-up, we were able to have national filmmakers interacting with the local audiences, and in a way that we wouldn't have been able to, because we wouldn't have been able to fly them out just for one screening or something. But we've been able to find new ways to engage people through that. And then of course, we also have travel opportunities where we work with a couple of different travel companies to find some travel experiences that tie into the programming on Milwaukee PBS, and just again kind of build on that excitement. We just had a trip last week to Door County that was an arts and crafts trip. It was a small little group of 11 people went and had a socially distanced artistic experience during the pandemic and got to work together and create some pieces to bring home. In the past, we've gone to Mackinac Island, and every couple of years, we also try to do an international trip that really ties into the people that love period dramas in other countries like England or Ireland. So those are some other ways that we really try to go beyond the screen and have people actually interact with the station and the people that are there, and give you some really good one-on-one FaceTime with folks to kind of, share what you're liking, questions that you have, and just kind of making sure that what we're putting out is more of a conversation with the community, that we're not just broadcasting out, that we're actually getting the feedback and working collaborative with everyone who watches Milwaukee PBS. And then, of course, I had to touch a little bit on the national programs that everyone loves. One of the ones that I almost didn't jot down, so I did right before, is, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, PBS NewsHour has been such a go-to must-see show for people in the community. And it's been around for so long and is so beloved that we just found out that on Tuesday, November 30th, there is going to be a special, a PBS NewsHour special, kind of a retrospective that evening, looking at the history of PBS NewsHour and how it began, where it's come, and what it's really meant to the country and especially to PBS viewers. So I wanted to make sure that you could all jot that down. But again, you'll see it promoted on air as well, but that's a new one that's coming. And then also, I wanted to touch just on some of the big names. Everyone loves Masterpiece. And Call the Midwife has been one of the big programs of the last decade. So if you haven't seen the previews yet, season 10 of Call the Midwife is coming up. It's starting in October. And I can kind of give a little preview right now that season 11 is going to be airing in the spring. So seasons 10 and 11 are both going to be available to everybody within the course of like 6 months. So you're not going to have to wait forever and ever to see the next season of Call the Midwife after this one. And then last year, I know that it helped me in January and February when it was so cold and I was trapped in my house. The new adaptation of All Creatures Great and Small was such must-see viewing for me. And season 2 is going to be premiering and starting in January. So just a couple of months until you get to see season 2 of that. And there is a brand new adaptation also starting in January of Around the World in 80 Days on Masterpiece with David Tennant. And I've seen some preview clips from it and some images. It looks amazing. And I think it's really going to take the country by storm. And again, we'll be coming in those darkest days when everyone needs a little bit of a lift. And this will be one way to travel in the depths of winter without having to actually leave your living room. And then also coming up in from January to April is the new season of Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr., which has also become one of the most popular shows on PBS across the country. And there is a new season, and there was a huge long list of the new guests, but I jotted down just a couple for today. He's going to be speaking with Nathan Lane, Tony Danza, Anita Hill, Mario Lopez, and actress Regina King. So that's going to be something to take in and watch, because every episode of that is just so fascinating. And the way that he finds and themes episodes together, I just find just so captivating. And I love it when he discovers that he's also related to the guests he has on. That's always amazing. And then finally, Ken Burns. Everyone loves Ken Burns. The Ken Burns documentaries become such an important part of PBS and sharing just the history of our country and notable figures with everyone. And we just had the Muhammad Ali documentary series, the 4-part on. And just teasing out a couple that are coming down, and we don't have dates for them yet, but they're coming to you in spring. I think it's going to be in April of 2022, just about 6 months from now. There's a 2-part Ben Franklin documentary that's going to be coming out that he's been working on. And then the next big one, which could become like the next Civil War, in 2025, he will be releasing The American Revolution, which is going to be his next kind of big, expansive miniseries along the lines of country music and the Roosevelts and New York and the Civil War. So those are some great Ken Burns things that are coming down to you shortly, and not so shortly with the American Revolution, but coming your way. And then just, with everything that I've been talking about, all of this, every single thing that we're able to put on the air, whether it's local, national, international, at some point, I'm sure intergalactic, but we're not there yet, is all thanks to all of you and our viewers and supporters in the community. We couldn't do any of this without you. And it's so wonderful to be in a community that really values public television. Through the pandemic, we have seen consistent and increased support at times from people in ways that have really been heartening. And it's been so kind of, I don't know, it's helped everyone on my team get through the pandemic, knowing that people are out there and really valuing what they're doing and getting behind it so that we can continue bringing all of this entertainment and news to everyone. Currently, just a couple of fun little facts is we are almost at 40,000 active members for Milwaukee PBS, which is like an all-time high. Thank you. And so we're super excited about that. And tying into that a little bit is earlier I was talking about the different stations that we have and the different ways you can interact with Milwaukee PBS now. And one of them is Milwaukee Pbs Passport, which is the online catalog where you can stream whenever you want. And that during the pandemic has really, really taken off and been a driver for a lot of people coming because you can binge whole series and things like that. So hearing that and knowing how much people are loving that along with the traditional way of watching television is currently there are about 2,000 episodes that are uploaded into PBS Passport. And over the next 18 months, there are going to be about 2,000 more to double that library. So you never have to feel like you have nothing to watch ever again. And we started doing some of that this month with bringing a lot of programs like America's Test Kitchen and Cook's Country, a lot of the arts and crafts and home shows, because more people have been spending time at home and I've been a little more inspired, I think, to do some home improvement and to, learn how to bake bread. So we're continuing on with that. And then one of the other kind of great things locally that we're able to put into Passport now is to start highlighting some of our kind of legacy programs on Milwaukee PBS. So shows like Outdoor Wisconsin, Around the Corner, The Making of Milwaukee, Healthful Indian Flavors with Alame Lou, if anyone watched that cooking show, Tracks Ahead, and I Remember. All of those are going to be available too for a local viewing experience on Passport as well. So we're trying to keep up with the times and trying to get all of our content out there because we've created so much over the years and want to make sure that everyone can continue watching it. So that's kind of the overarching stuff that I had written down to cover for today. So I just quick wanted to thank you before we enter the Q&A section. Thank you all for inviting me to speak and to share kind of what we're doing at the station. And thank you all so much for watching and supporting the station. And I think now we have time for questions. So I'm gonna maybe look into the chat and see what I can find. That kind of the overarching stuff that let's see. Cover for today. When is this?
Jonathan, there aren't any questions just yet in the chat, and I think.
Oops, your sound just went out. I'm sorry, Lorraine. Oh, now it's back.
Am I back again? Okay.
Yeah.
I know some people have raised their hand and there will be questions. I just want to point out to people that I was madly typing, trying to get what you were saying, and I may have caused more curiosity and confusion than helpful. But if there's something you would like me to type in there, Jonathan, that would just compress, that would be fine. So it was just a fascinating, wonderful program. And thank you, Ms. Chris, as well. So that it's great. Okay, couple hands. The first one I saw was BJ. So I'm going to go there and she has a question for you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lord. Your energy about our terrific PBS station here in Milwaukee is so infectious. And I wondered, Milwaukee really is one of the few cities that has produced a tremendous amount of local programming. A lot of cities that have PBS stations are not able to do that. How did Milwaukee get to be so great at being able to fund and produce local programs?
Thanks. Oh, that's a great question. And I think there are a couple of reasons tied to that. One of them, I think, is that PBS stations tend to fall into two main categories, which is a community licensee and a university licensee. The communities are standalones and self-funded, whereas the universities, like us, we're part of MATC. So historically, being able to be attached to the television production track for students has given us the ability to have a little more hands-on in the studio and allowed us to do a little bit more, I think, historically with getting things on. Whereas normally filling a crew and getting everyone there is going to take a lot more funds than, even what we could raise. But we do have some kind of built-in labor from these young people who are learning to become leaders, the next leaders in the television field. So I think that's been really important. And another is different PBS stations kind of take a different focus on what they're going to be doing. And some really focus on education and children's programming. And our focus really, although we carry all of those programs, what we do in-house tends to be this local storytelling. So a lot of the funds that we raise, we funnel into these shows that talk about the different parts of our community. So we can really go in and kind of tell those more in-depth adult-oriented stories, more so than the educational, because we found it just people have been requesting them, people respond well to them, and PBS has done such an amazing job of building up such a wealth of PBS Kids and young people educational materials, both on air and online, that's one area where we haven't really had to put a lot of focus on the local front, where we've been able to really dive into these community stories.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a good explanation. Makes sense. Our next person with a question is Dennis Merritt.
Boy, thank you for the Wisconsin tour here. I grew up on a dairy farm around Green Bay, so to go from the down and dirty of the dairy farm to the luxury of the new Symphony Hall, that's so Wisconsin. A couple of things come to mind. I feel relatively new to Milwaukee, moved here in 2007 after 25 years in Madison. And I've really enjoyed the open house Milwaukee, where you feel like you're a tourist in your own city. So I was thinking of some combination of that with Around the Corner, like focusing on some of those great buildings and some of the history of it and so on, maybe just segment and segment. There's also Bubbler Talk, some kind of a combination of that. So for some kind of foreigner like me who's still trying to learn about the city, just to know some of the special stories about these buildings, like just what you were reviewing today about the Warner Theater, I would find that so interesting.
Sure, thank you. That's a great idea. And we've been at the station, we've taken part in the Doors Open, but to think about it from that way and kind of reaching out to some of the other organizations that are also part of it and letting people in. One of the great things that we have through the making of Milwaukee and Around the Corner that we've developed over time is a wonderful relationship with John Gerda, the historian of Milwaukee. And we've been lucky enough to get him on a boat, cornered on a boat a few times, and do some river cruises up and down the river into the lake, where he talks about the history of the buildings of downtown and what the neighborhoods used to look like. And those have been some smaller events in the past, but once the pandemic is over, we're looking at expanding those out and trying to do them a little bit more often to get people on. But to also kind of build on, I think, I'll pass this on to our content area where they can look at kind of our files and what they have, because I remember the show that it's no longer in production had a lot of historical programs that would deal with these historical buildings and looking at that. So we can see what we even have on file. And there's an old show that aired 10 years, long before I worked at the station, but I remember watching it. And there were, I think, 2 versions of it made here called Places That Aren't There Anymore, where they looked at the historical buildings of Milwaukee. And a lot of them are businesses that aren't there anymore, that people were just kind of reminiscing about. But those have been historically popular shows. So I think that that's a wonderful idea. Thank you, Dennis, for coming up with that. And I'm going to pass that along because we're always looking for different ways of, again, highlighting the community. And I think that our architecture and our buildings are just as interesting as a lot of the people that have come through this city over the years.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I often myself am curious about some of the older buildings that have still the old painted signs from the prior owner and prior businesses. And I always thought it would be so good to learn about that business that had been there in the past. That's just another idea.
Yeah,
thanks. And I welcome Bruce Wiggins to explore his question.
Yes, thank you. Picking up on another aspect of history, I'm wondering if viewers locally and maybe nationally would be interested in some of the evolution of PBS and the history. I have an uncle who started out at WTMJ and evolved over the years to be one of the first executive directors of PBS. And very interesting history. He's written a book called Televisionaries that talks about the evolution of what was at the time thought to be educational television and the discussions in the 60s and 70s. And I'm wondering if that might be of interest to programming people here locally or possibly nationally.
I think both, just to look at it that way. And I'm curious in the next, I thought more of this, and I think the pandemic may have had an effect on this. Last year was the 50th anniversary of PBS proper, of the service kind of kicking off. And they had started some planning for it and some celebrations that I don't think it ever kind of was able to be as big as they'd wanted to be because of everything that happened. But I'm curious to find out if there were some programs and documentaries that were started at the time that maybe are still in production that are going to look at, nationally what PBS, how it started and what it's become. But, and then, again, building on that, what we might be able to, delightfully pilfer an idea from and do a local version of that as well. Because we are, one of the nice things about starting before PBS, back in 1957, is we have this kind of exciting educational history before PBS formally existed. So thank you.
So how could I get this book to you that might be of interest?
Let me, I wrote down the title of it. I'm going to check with our chief content officer to see if this is because we have a small library at the station, to see if it's something that's already on file there that we could look into, because it sounds like something that someone somewhere, especially within the education department, would have picked up at something.
Yeah, Televisionaries is the name of it, and the name of the individual is E. James Robertson.
E. James Robertson. Thank you so much for letting me know about that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. DJ, I'm going to flip to our host today. I think she raised her hand and you had already asked a question. So, well, I'll get back to you. Okay, Chris, what is your question?
Well, I'm sorry, I would have mentioned it earlier, but I didn't want to sound egotistical. Children's Fair was started at Channel 10, and Wayne Groton was just a marvelous, marvelous fellow. We were just going national, but we had a young director, and he said, gosh, if we can get national Sesame Street, why should we make Children's Fair? So we took a hike, but we were just truly, they took all of the good parts of Channel 10. They took Brownie Bear, who did the drawing. They took Miss Chris, me, the storyteller up in a castle. They took Weisgerber, who did a science thing from the museum. They did Uncle Al. They did all of these things. They took me as the art teacher. And we we were being shown out in Illinois, we were shown in Arizona, we were just going national, but this young fellow said, why should we do this? And we really should have gone on. And it was Frank Zeidler who got Channel 10 to be existing. When he was mayor, the socialist, he fought for public television and Channel 10. And Jonathan, these are some things I'd kind of like to talk to you about sometime. And the other thing, I lived in the Matthew Keenan house. It is a historical house. It is where the Pfister Hotel on Jefferson, then there is Watts, and then there is art studio, and then there's this house with a double staircase. I lived up in the balcony. It used to be the balcony, but they had to make an apartment on one side for a little old lady who lived in another house that the Erdan, the landlord, wanted to buy. But I was working out at the State Fair, and Shomer Lichtner said, "You don't want to live in the house that you're living in anymore?" Well, I know there's an apartment right downtown across from the Art Center. A little old French teacher lived there, but she walked out in the street and was run over. So it's for rent. Well, I asked the landlord and he said, "Well, it'll take too much to fix it up." I said, "Give me a cheap rent and paint and I'll do it." Well, he did. All I had was a cot and a hi-fi. I plugged it in and psst, it was DC current. He didn't tell me that. I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Well, girlie, why didn't you ask?" Well, they put lines up and it finally resolved itself. But it was a marvelous place to live because on Saturday morning, I could roll out of bed, cross the street, and the old art institute, I taught art to the visually handicapped. I was right there to do my teaching, and I could have my little children go up with me these 3 flights and have lunch. And I had a rule. All of the little girls could visit anytime they wanted, but they had to have clean hands and clean panties. And they followed those directions, but there's a lot of history with Channel 10 that I truly think with Children's Fair that ought to be explored.
Let's ask Jonathan. Jonathan, there might be another series in this.
I think so. I think so. This is wonderful. You know, there's a little extra bits I didn't have. So this is great for this week's conversations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump to Joanne and then back to BJ. Okay, Joanne.
Okay. Okay, Jonathan, I am a real avid guest viewer, but I don't understand how to get to, 10-1, 10-2, 10-3 or whatever. That's one question. And the other question is, and I suppose if I just call the journal, the PBS, they'll tell me, but the other question is, or a recommendation is, newspapers is a really important issue these days. The decline of them, the growth of virtual, but the Milwaukee Journal, Sentinel, the history of that, what has happened to it, what's happening to it now, that is something that you might look into.
No, and thank you for that. And the last couple of years, the Journal Sentinel, we have had some really strong partnerships with them. Our Kids in Crisis documentary, and has been great. And then we've done these Listen MKE virtual sessions over the last couple of years with WWM and the Journal Sentinel. So we've developed some really good working relationships with them. So looking at, I think that someone kind of going forward over to there and bringing up the history of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel with them would be an easy subject to at least get started. So thank you.
Yeah. So it's an Art Deco building, there's a lot about the building as well.
Yeah. Which I think is basically
Thanks.
empty.
What do I do about not knowing how to get to 10.1, 10.2?
Oh, and then so you're
that's
watching on an antenna, right?
What?
Or
Local,
do you have
local.
I have a traditional TV. I don't have a fancy one.
Oh, the digital antenna, those new antennas are the ways you scan those, and that's how you get to those subchannels. So if you have like an old traditional TV with just like an old antenna, you're probably just going to pick up.
I have a flat screen, but it's I don't do anything fancy with it.
There are oh gosh, the general number here. Hold on one second. If you don't mind me reading from a magazine for 1 second, I'm going to give you this phone number that anyone can use. It's our viewer services line, and they have all the tech. They can help you with all of this stuff. And that's it's 414-297-7520. It's 414-297-7520. And they've helped some of the most interesting questions over the time. So I think yours is going to be a super simple one for them to help with.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we're going to close with BJ's question, and otherwise we're going to have the world's longest YouTube forum. So thank you very much, and BJ.
Thank you very much. I will make this quick. I want to thank you, Jonathan, for the work that PBS here does on the captioning, so that for all of the programs, those of us with hearing loss can understand everything, because the captions are great. And one thing I realized is when you talked about the wonderful walkthrough and things for viewers of like the Pabst Mansion, unfortunately, that is not visible to people who have wheelchairs and other mobility issues. And it would be so wonderful to have a special for disabled viewers going through, say, the Pabst Mansion, to show them what the mobile viewers are able to see, because they really are treasures of Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. And I didn't know this until we did the last Christmas event at the Pabst Mansion, that they have an elevator now in the back. It's like a secret one. But for other ones, I think that's, thinking about these historical building shows, if they're done, that'll be one way of doing it. And even with the Pabst, I know that we have talked about not only approaching them for another in-person event, but to get some kind of a either in-person or virtual history event with them, where they've got such great visual assets that they could share with everyone during that too. So keep your eye out. One of those will probably be announced in the coming months as well.
It would be fabulous, actually, for something like the Pabst to perhaps do a tour with someone in a wheelchair using the elevator, showing people how accessible a building is, because we don't really know about that. And even if they put it on their website and say, we are accessible, I know just from looking at it from the outside, it's up on a hill. How do I get into it in the first place? But that might be multi-purpose in terms of helping people realize the restrictions for mobility impaired, as well as highlighting that just because we're an old building on a hill with lots of stairs does not mean you can't come visit us.
Yep, that's true. And actually, thanks for bringing that, because I just had a conversation 2 days ago with one of our instructors who just shared that the educational program just got a new piece of equipment that's a camera attached to a chair on wheels.
Oh.
I'm going to ask her if that could be possible, if that's, if they're looking for projects, if that's something that piece of machinery could be used for. I'm not sure how specific it is, but that would be a wonderful way of using it if it does work that way. So thank you for bringing that up, because I'm going to talk to her about that on Monday.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jonathan, I think you've just met your next committee of consultants for future programming.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I know that we do have to go. And Mark, you're going to bring us to closure. And Miss Chris, thank you so much for the work you did in having Mark join us, John join us today.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to be stopping the live stream.